Hello and welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
And this is the podcast where every week in season 2 of the podcast, we bring you a review of weekly television. We parachute in, could be anywhere, could be any show, and we review for you just a random weekly television program.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be, as you said, pretty much anything. There are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of hours of weekly pro wrestling from every streaming service you could think of that we've dumped into the randomizer. Randomizer pulls a show, and we skydive 35,000 feet in and see what is going on. Get a sense of what the heck this company, territory, promotion is, what they were building to. And this week's show is another first for us on Wrestling at Random, if you're listening in linear fashion. One that I've been waiting for as far as a promotion to watch, review, and cover. Smoky Mountain Wrestling. In a lot of ways, the last attempt at a Southern territory-style wrestling promotion on any sort of large scale that wasn't developmental or anything like that. So, yeah, I was very much looking forward to checking this out when the randomizer pulled it for us.
Yeah, now before I get into the history of a little bit of backstory about Smoky Mountain Wrestling, I do want to remind all of our listeners that this feed is free. It comes to you via your podcatcher of choice. You subscribe, you get a new episode every single Sunday, and you have the entire back catalog, which includes all of Season 1, where we reviewed major pro wrestling events, pay-per-views, Clash of Champions, all of those, Saturday night's main events, all of those are available Season 1 for free in this feed you have subscribed to right now. It's evergreen content. It's waiting there patiently for you. And if you like what we do here, you want to support the show, the best way to do that is through our Patreon, patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom. There you can sign up for bonus content. That's right. We will provide additional content separate from the free feed. You will get bonus content where every single Thursday we review shows that don't quite fit into the formula of Season 1 or Season 2.
Yeah, it could be a show. It could be, a lot of times it's an odd or end, a random match or a couple matches that the randomizer pulled. I always like to say it's an island of misfit toys within the island of misfit toys that is this podcast already. There are some interesting things over in that feed, some fun stuff, and quite a few episodes available for you there now.
That's right. If you sign up for the bonus content, there's multiple tiers you can sign up for to support the show. You sign up for the bonus content tier. Right now, you've got multiple episodes that you can. I think we're up to 5 at this point, and probably if you listen to this weeks later, coming here, because this is evergreen content as well. The back catalog for the paid feed has continued to grow, so you can subscribe right now, have additional bonus content for some of those wacky matches, some of those really classic matches as well.
Yeah, it's some fun, wacky stuff. Again, like William Regal versus Samoa Joe, plus, spoiler, a run-in from Naked Midian and much more. That is one of the episodes, but then also the very first episode that we recorded for that was Ric Flair versus Barry Windham in a 5-star match from Worldwide in 1987. And there's also full or near full shows that we reviewed on there. So, a good eclectic mix. And just to reiterate what you said, completely exclusive. Those podcasts, they will never find their way to the free feed. The only way that you can get them is by supporting us on our Patreon.
There's multiple tiers there as well. So you can also, like you like to say, Adam, you can be the randomizer. You can executive produce this show. You can choose.
Which we already have. We already have one of those up. If you're listening in linear fashion, from someone who was the randomizer, they executive produced the show, and there are more of those coming.
That's right. So there's been a lot of people supporting the show via that tier, and they've put in their requests. We're watching, we're reviewing. Those will hit that paid feed as well. So if you want to pick a show, if you want us to watch the best of Greg the Hammer Valentine, or you want us to watch another 5-star match we haven't reviewed yet, go ahead.
Or if you want us to watch Puppet pulling out a gun on TNA, those things are all possible. And one note before we move off of the Patreon is that for that, like, yes, we're in season 2 right now which is all weekly TV, but on the Patreon, you can request anything. You can request a full pay-per-view. You can request a full episode of TV. If there's just one match from a show, whether it be a pay-per-view or a TV show that you want us to watch, you can request that as well if you do that tier.
And there's also the ability to get a t-shirt. So there's a tier to get a t-shirt as well. Any tier you choose, you can always just do it for 1 month, get your special prize, request a show, get a t-shirt, and then the next month you can downgrade to just the paid feed subscription and support the show that way and continue to get that great bonus content. So that, I just want to make sure everyone's aware. Patreon.com/wrestling@random. Go check it out.
You know who could have used more paid supporters? Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Boy, howdy. They had... let's talk a little bit about how Smoky Mountain Wrestling got started. Jim Cornette formed the promotion in late 1991. And interesting note, the one person who was the main supporter, the main financial supporter for Smoky Mountain Wrestling, famous music producer Rick Rubin.
Yeah, I remember years later, like, I was aware of Smoky Mountain as a kid, again, as we've talked about so many times in this podcast, through the After Mags, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, Inside Wrestling, The Wrestler, reading about the company without ever actually seeing it back then. But then years later, when I found out that Rick Rubin was the money man behind Smoky Mountain, wow, talk about mind-blowing.
Yeah, and, you know, I watched the Beastie Boys documentary on Apple TV, and it was great. And all it did was make me want to see a documentary about Rick Rubin. And this is just one of those other things that, beyond his amazing music career, his love of pro wrestling and support of Smoky Mountain, I would have loved to have seen a documentary on Rick Rubin covering this period as well. Smoky Mountain went from 1991... through until late 1995. So November 26, 1995 would be the final show of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. So during this 91 to 95 period, you had what the promotion tried to be was a Southern wrestling territory. The old territory days were behind most of Major League Wrestling at that point, but Smoky Mountain Wrestling was providing that style and trying to fill that gap, and had a working relationship with both World Championship Wrestling and the World Wrestling Federation.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that with WCW, because that was my first actual exposure to seeing Smoky Mountain Wrestling, seeing anything about Smoky Mountain Wrestling in moving picture form, not just on a page in a magazine, was when the Rock and Roll Express and the Heavenly Bodies showed up on WCW Saturday Night. The tag titles were there. Jim Cornette was there. When I say that, I mean the Smoky Mountain tag titles. And I believe they went on to have a Smoky Mountain Tag Team Championship match at Super Brawl that year.
Super Brawl 3, February of 93, correct.
Between the Rock and Roll Express and the Heavenly Bodies, that being Dr. Tom Pritchard and Gigolo Jimmy Del Rey, who were basically the Smoky Mountain version of a Jim Cornette-led Midnight Express tag team, type of team, I should say, that really the promotion was built around. And then, yeah, they would also be featured at WWF, which is, you know, an interesting historical footnote that you had this small promotion that had either long or short-term agreements with the two big wrestling companies who certainly weren't friendly with each other.
No, the Heavenly Bodies participated in that February 93 Super Brawl show for WCW, and the Heavenly Bodies took on the Steiner Brothers for the WWF tag team titles at SummerSlam that year, 1993 as well. So
wow.
between
that's
in the same year, the same
within
team.
probably what, 6 months?
Yep.
5-6 months. That's unheard of.
And the promotion, like I mentioned, folded in November of 1995. The show we're going to talk about today aired January 7th, 1995. So the very beginning of the final year of the company. This show was mainly a recap for the Christmas Chaos show, which took place the previous Christmas night. It was actually over 3 nights, but most of the recaps are from one of the Christmas Chaos nights.
3 nights of Christmas Chaos. Wow, that's like the Super Summer Sizzler tour of the winter in Smoky Mountain.
Yeah, and fun footnote, all of the tickets were $6 a piece for the Christmas Chaos shows.
There you go. So I'm assuming Rick Rubin was putting in a lot more than $6 to keep this afloat.
The show opens with a video intro backed by very nondescript generic music, and we cut to the studio where we see Jim Ross, Les Thatcher, and the Smoky Mountain television champion, Nature Boy Buddy Landell.
Yes, and you mentioned it right off the top here. Jim Ross on this broadcast. I had forgotten about Jim Ross's association with Smoky Mountain, particularly here, as late as early 1995. They're in a very dark studio. They're going for the territory vibe we've talked about in previous episodes, including, if you're listening in linear fashion, one of the most recent episodes with NWA Championship Wrestling from Florida. They're going for that same studio desk vibe, but they're standing. There's not a desk, and it feels very empty. You can tell they're not in a studio where people are. It honestly had kind of a depressing look.
Jim Ross welcomes him by saying, "Why are you here?" Landell says that Robert Q. Harmon is his agent, and he bought this airtime for his client.
Yeah, but what does that mean? Like, he bought this airtime, meaning he bought the spot to be the announcer? It was weird because this wasn't like one of those paid advertisement NWO type of things. It was just, he bought the spot to, maybe it was $6. Maybe he bought him a ticket and he got in early and he got to the booth.
I do like irritated Jim Ross yelling, "Why are you here?"
Yes. Buddy Landell says that he beat the dirty white boy's teeth in on Christmas in Knoxville. And that's when I remember that, yes, in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, initially a heel and then like the top baby face, like a Dusty Rhodes style baby face, was dirty white boy Tony Anthony.
Yeah, we see a clip from the Christmas Chaos show. Landell kicks the downed dirty white boy, and Landell just keeps yelling at the crowd. He does some posing. He poses, and the commentator says, "Adonis lives tonight." Not.
Oh, yeah. Adonis lives tonight here in Knoxville. Not.
That was...
Yes. And this is Les Thatcher on commentary here. I was hoping we were going to get Jim Ross, but on all of these Christmas Chaos matches, it is Les Thatcher on his own on commentary. And he's not terrible. Like, he's fine. But when you got Jim Ross right there, particularly 1995 vintage Jim Ross, calling like a faux territory type program, you're hoping for him. But the other thing I noted was just how terrible the footage from Christmas Chaos looks. It's like mostly, it's shot in color, but it's really degraded or just shot wrong to where it's just very faded out, almost black and white in certain parts of the screen. And it's not like the entire show looks like that. So it's just an issue with the footage and how they shot it. It did not look, this did not look major league at all.
No, and this was in a high school gym in Knoxville, Tennessee. That's the type of arena we're talking about for Christmas Chaos here.
And it's very darkened. And so when I was watching this, I thought, well, that just means they must have a terrible crowd. But later on, there's another match from this show. And when the match ends, the house lights go up and it was packed. So it was, it's an interesting decision. I know, again, they were kind of going for that old time look, but you'd think, particularly for a struggling promotion at this point, and they had a good crowd, you would want people to see that they had a good crowd.
They had over 2,000 fans in that high school gym, so it was a really good crowd. We see a slam by Landell. He goes for the figure four, but he goes for it in the most annoying fashion I've ever seen.
It's the Hulk Hogan figure four, where you literally, instead of grabbing the leg and doing a spinning toe hold, like a Terry Funk style spinning toe hold, and then going into the figure four, you just pick up the one leg, lightly step through, and then fall into it. It is the most low energy, low excitement figure four, because so much of what can happen in a figure four is when the guy spins, the guy goes for an inside cradle, like it just builds it up. This was bad, and it didn't matter anyway because Dirty White Boy went for the inside cradle and only got two.
Yeah, I can't get over how infuriating this was, because if you don't do the spinning toe hold, when you do it like Landell did and you just stand there and put it on, it just looks weird and it's awful. Like, so don't do it.
I'll give him credit, though. It wasn't like Hulk Hogan on that one episode of Nitro. I think it was when he put it on Arn Anderson in the middle of a tag match, and he put this leg under Anderson's ankle instead of over it, and then Arn's like frantically trying to put the foot over his own foot so the move doesn't look terrible. Like, this wasn't quite that bad, but it's a low bar to clear. After that inside cradle, he goes for it again, gets it on.
The same way he put it on same way again. He did it twice. Yeah, it was awful.
It's his way of differentiating himself from the other Nature Boy, Ric Flair, I guess.
Yeah, I'm already a low rent version. Watch me do a low rent figure four as well.
Lean into, as you would say, the Kirkland's version of the Nature Boy right. Here in Smoky Mountain. Dirty White Boy counters a backdrop with a DDT. He puts the figure four on Buddy.
Properly. He put it on properly.
Properly. The non-Nature Boy here was able to properly put on the figure four, which is quite the statement. Landell immediately gets to the ropes and then just pops up, pulls a chain out, goes for a punch, misses. Dirty White Boy punches him with the chain. Referee Mark Curtis, one of the best referees of all time, died way too young. Mark Curtis sees this, DQs the Dirty White Boy. Les Thatcher is livid. The one thing that I note here is how perfunctory this was. It was territory heel stuff 101, but Buddy Landell is just going through the motions, maybe more than anyone I've seen on any show we've reviewed for this podcast. He is just Heelbot 2000 here.
Yeah, a couple more shots on Landell. We cut back to JR, Les, and Landell again. And Landell's calling out the Dirty White Boy, saying he's ducking him.
He did have a great line where Jim Ross asks him for his thoughts, and he says, "Well, I didn't see it. I was counting my money and missed the replay."
He mentions something about wanting to fight Lawler instead of him.
Yeah, he says he should be getting the shot at the Smoky Mountain heavyweight title instead of Jerry Lawler. This is for an upcoming show on January 28th. He says that the Dirty White Boy is scared of him and is hiding behind Smoky Mountain. Jim Ross then says, "Well, Dirty White Boy will be out here in a few minutes." Buddy then says he has a conference call with Robert Q. Harmon and has to go.
Yeah, he goes, "Look at the time. Do you know what time it is on the West Coast? I have a conference call." And he had to go. The Dirty White Boy is the Smoky Mountain champion, and he's defending the title against Jerry Lawler on the 28th. We are now caught up. We get a Lawler recorded promo.
This is great.
This is serious Jerry Lawler.
He's serious with a bit of humor. This, if you're going to do heel Jerry Lawler, this is what I want. Yes. None of we've talked about how horrendous he was on so many of the shows that we reviewed on season 1 of this podcast, where he was on commentary with Jim Ross and just really torpedoed some otherwise good shows. But here in the locker room of the Knoxville Civic Coliseum, where they will be meeting in just a few days time, he's back here cutting this promo. There's a guy who's in this trash-riddled locker room under a bunch of trash. Jerry Lawler says that this is, in fact, the dirty white boy, Tony Anthony. He says that the dirty white boy is homeless and is a pile of trash, just like this pile of trash.
Well, he makes a crack. He makes a crack that he's homeless, but based on the homes in Knoxville, who would want to live in them either?
Yes. The theme of this promo,
town. Yeah.
It was as much about slandering Knoxville, Tennessee, as it was slandering the dirty white boy, Tony Anthony. He calls the fans, and this is a direct quote, ignorant hillbillies, which he says he's from Memphis, the only real city in Tennessee, the only literate city where people properly enunciate and have a school system. You wouldn't know what that's like in Knoxville, you bunch of hicks.
Super.
So good. I was dying here.
Yeah, no, Lawler was great, burying Knoxville, putting over Memphis, burying the dirty white boy, putting himself over. It was good. Lawler's a pro when he wants to be, and this was one of those examples here.
And it was a nice little touch too that he brought a WWF microphone stand and mic with him to Knoxville to do this. So just a little bit more of like, basically, I'm leaving my perch, my throne in Sanford, Connecticut to come and put down Knoxville, Tennessee.
The dirty white boy is interviewed by JR. He says he's not hard to find. He's ready for Lawler. Then he talks about Buddy Landell, and he tried to smother him to death at one point, apparently.
Yeah, I think Buddy Landell, there's like an ether rag spot angle that they did with Buddy Landell and the dirty white boy. It also should be noted as we take a trip to Fashion Corner that if you in your mind conjure up what a pro wrestler named Dirty White Boy Tony Anthony would look like and wear in 1995 in Tennessee, it is exactly what he looked like and wore here in real life. He's wearing zebra Zubaz, a fanny pack, a t-shirt. He is the dirty white boy Tony Anthony. The gimmick was accurate and well suited.
So apparently the same night he faces Lawler, he's going to do double duty in a lights out match, non-title, against Buddy Landell as well.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. I wonder where that went.
After commercial, we have JR and Bruiser Bedlam, who looks like if A-Train, Giant Bernard, Albert, if you put him in the dryer and shrunk him, that's
yes.
what he reminded me of here.
Yeah, if you had a growth chart, the top of the growth chart would be A-Train, all those other names you named for that man. Then you would have Big Bully Busick. And then the next step down in size of men with the exact same look would be Bruiser Bedlam. I was hoping at this point that in honor of Big Bully Busick, he would use a stump puller if we got to see him. At this point, though, all we got was a really bad short promo where I imagine Jim Ross thinking, this is where I'm at in life, that I'm interviewing Bruiser Bedlam in this dilapidated, sad-looking studio.
He heads to the ring. The ring announcer calls it a contenders match.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a contenders match. Introducing first, weighing 285 pounds from the docks of Detroit, Bruiser Bedlam.
Bruiser Bedlam with no Jim Cornette at ringside. I don't like that Bedlam guy.
He's rather aggressive. I know.
Very aggressive. I'm tired of those elbows in the gut.
Okay, aren't they all?
Yeah, that was. I had a few thoughts. First, yes, unless it's a lights out match, meaning non-sanctioned, everything should be a contenders match. And then my bigger concern was if Bruiser Bedlam was a contender, I see why they were in trouble.
JR then clarifies that this match is important for Smoky Mountain rankings, and his opponent is Cactus Jack. And now I'm excited.
God, a star, a bona fide real professional wrestler here. We should note, though, you talk about the studio looking kind of sad and pathetic. This match, this is not from Christmas Chaos, at least not from the same show. This is in if that was a high school gym, this is a middle school gym, and it is an empty middle school gym. There's some fans opposite the hard camera, but when they go out to the floor, It's as if a black hole swallowed the entire universe, and that's where they are wrestling. They have the lights completely off everywhere but like the hard camera side, because clearly we get a few shots when they brawl towards the broadcast table. And I have been to many indie shows in my life that weren't well attended but had more people than there were here.
Yeah, they start by running into each other. Cactus looks at him, gives him the finger guns, bang, bang. Buddy Landell then joins the commentary team.
With Jim Ross and Les Thatcher. So this is not a Les Thatcher solo job here.
Headlock by Bedlam. Shoulder block knocks Cactus down with a shoulder. After some shots, Bedlam shoves Cactus to the floor. Now, this is where they disappear into the darkness.
Yes, into the void. The void of Smoky Mountain's future is where they're at. We cannot see much at all. My favorite thing of this match, maybe of this show, one of them, is they get back in the ring. They escape the black hole. They're back from the void. The Abyss. It would have been great if Abyss showed up out of that black hole, by the way. But Buddy Landell starts talking on his $1,500 Armani suit, which Jim Ross immediately calls him out and makes fun of him for calling this Armani suit an Armani suit.
Cactus fights back with kicks and a chest rake. Bedlam... He's laid across the middle rope. Cactus, I'm sure, came running in with a leg to the back of the head, but we didn't see anything because the camera cut to some random girl in the crowd.
Yes. Depending on the promotion, the territory, this means one of two things when this happens. And yes, what happened, Cactus goes for this, bombs away on the ropes. As contact is about to happen, though, instead the camera flashes to like a random teenage girl in the crowd. If this was global, what this would have meant was that a heel did something dastardly, because anytime there was interference or a weapon shot on global, the Global Wrestling Federation, GWF, they would cut to the crowd because it was just too violent or too terrible to see. A lot of times, though, this would happen when there was a botch. So my guess is that something went awry here. And so instead we got this long shot of this random teenage girl.
I'll blame Bedlam for any problems.
That is a fair, I think it's, you're assigning blame fairly because he did not look good here in the little bit that we saw. He, not an accomplished pro wrestler.
Back to the outside. Cactus with a chair, nails Bedlam with it.
Hard shot.
Bedlam hits Cactus in the back with the chair as well. Back in the ring, Bedlam catches a charging Cactus Jack and hits a power slam. Back elbow, only a 2 count.
A terrible flying back elbow, by Bruiser Bedlam. He looks doing this back elbow like how Paul Orndorff looked trying to get away from Akira Maeda in that spin kick from our Patreon exclusive show that we did a while back. This was not athletic.
Cactus bites him in the corner. The referee pulls Cactus out of the corner. Bedlam pulls brass knuckles out of his trunks, hits Cactus.
Or out of his trunk. I can imagine what his car would look like, by the way. I wonder if it's a Volvo that he got from the Florida Volvo dealers in 1985, maybe he was in that car that was suspended by balloons.
The balloons that flew away. Yeah.
Yes. He flew his car here to this middle school in Tennessee.
Listen to our Florida Championship Wrestling episode for all that information. That's in the
Yes, if you've ever wanted to hear 1980s commercial reviews, and I'm not talking wrestling commercial reviews, I'm talking like Rolaids and stuff like that, random car dealerships, you must go back and listen to our Championship Wrestling from Florida 1985 episode here on the free feed.
So he pulls the brass knuckles out of his trunks, hits Cactus with them, puts them back in his trunks. He counts 2, but Brian Lee runs in to stop the ref's count. He tells the referee that he's got the knucks in his trunks. Landell was pretty funny here when he says Brian Lee put knuckles into Bedlam's trunks.
Yeah, Brian Lee was actually, Buddy Landell was actually really good on commentary during this match. Very amusing.
The ref checks, sees him, and DQs Bedlam. So the chair shot, okay. The Nux, not okay. Got it.
Disappearing into a black void, okay. All of those things. But yeah, this, again, I wrote like the finish, it felt so perfunctory, just like going through the motions. Also, I had forgotten that Brian Lee, after his journey to the WWF as the fake Undertaker, some 4 or 5 months prior to this, came back to Smoky Mountain as the conquering babyface.
After commercial, Chip Kessler tells us about a tag team match at Christmas Chaos.
And Chip Kessler, by the way, looks exactly like you would expect a man named Chip Kessler on a pro wrestling broadcast to look like. That's the only way I can describe it.
Yes, he'd be the announcer if you were able to create create a wrestler in a video game. If you could create a backstage interviewer,
he'd be the default.
Kessler. The default.
Yeah, exactly. The low effort. Don't want to spend any time making a new guy. He would be create an announcer. But yes, he takes us back to Christmas Chaos, where it is Cactus Jack and Tracy Smothers taking on Chris Candido and Boo Bradley in a Falls Count Anywhere match. He informs us that Brian Lee had transportation problems and couldn't make the show. So thank God for Cactus Jack that Brian Lee's like 83 Volkswagen didn't break down on the way to that middle school, and he was able to tell the referee about the Bruiser Bedlam foreign object, but no such luck here at Christmas Chaos.
No, I looked up what happened here, and according to Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Brian Lee had quit the promotion, and that is why Tracy Smothers was brought in as a last-minute replacement for Lee, who had quit at this point.
So had he... I'm confused, because we just saw Brian Lee.
Yeah, I assume that was taped before the
even
Christmas
earlier
Chaos
than Christmas
show. Yeah,
Chaos?
that's what
Thanksgiving Thunder. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's wow, interesting. I guess that is a transportation problem.
That it is.
Transporting yourself there is probably unlikely.
Chris Candido is 22 years old here, so a very young Chris Candido, and the greatness that is Tracy Smothers. This match had it all. Apparently,
it also had Boo Bradley, who, for the uninitiated, will go on to be Balls Mahoney in ECW shortly after this.
So Tammy Fitch, who you would know as Tammy Sitch or Sunny in the WWF, she's Chris Candido's real-life girlfriend and valet manager at the time, and she had vowed to throw Boots the Cat off a bridge if Boo didn't take care of Cactus Jack.
Yeah, at this point, I was offended. And I've been offended several times on this podcast watching back old wrestling. But here is a cat owner, the fact that we had cat-based violence being threatened to Boo Bradley, who was, it was sort of the classic simpleton kind of gimmick with Boo Bradley. Definitely, you really couldn't do that right now. Probably the last time you saw an angle or a character like that in real major league big time wrestling would have been Eugene. So it's kind of imagine Balls Mahoney as Eugene, and that's this guy.
We joined this in progress, which I'm disappointed because apparently at some point there was a Cactus Jack was backdropped into a jacuzzi, and there was a fight in a jacuzzi at some point that we do not see.
How do we miss that? That's unfortunate.
So we're joined in progress. We see Bradley, he DDTs Jack on a trash can for a near fall. Candido hits Smothers with a chair. He holds Cactus down by the legs. Boo goes to the top rope for a big splash, but Tracy Smothers, he pulls Cactus's arms, which drags him out of the way, at the same time dragging Candido into the line of fire. He gets hit with Bradley's splash. Cactus with the cover, gets the 3 count. That was a fun, creative finish. And again, 0 lighting outside the ring.
But then after it's over, they turn the lights on, and that's where I see that, holy crap, they actually have a really good crowd.
Yeah, Candido, he's yelling at Boo Bradley after the match. The crowd
telling him it's his fault. The crowd starts chanting Boo, who, by the way, Boo is just wearing boxer shorts. So if you've ever wanted to imagine what a young Balls Mahoney would have looked like in boxer shorts with a shaved head and a mohawk, you get that here. And the announcer, again, Les Thatcher, tells us that they were boyhood friends, I guess. That's the story here.
Yeah, they've been boyhood friends, and the crowd is ready for Bradley to turn on his boyhood friend Candido.
Candido's been bullying him, using him, manipulating him for years, ever since they were children.
Candido slaps Boo, who finally snaps and punches Candido. The commentary had to rush through to explain the story, but they got all the details in, and we were caught up quickly. So good job.
Yes, I'll give them credit for that. I did have a hard time believing, and maybe it's just because the condition both men were in, but how both of these men, how they were boyhood friends. If Chris Candido was 22, like was Balls Mahoney only 20, or excuse me, Boo Bradley only 22 here? I guess.
Candido grabs a chain and nails him from behind. Tammy Fitch at this point boots the cat into the bag.
Like actually boots the cat. We see there's a live cat here at this point.
Yes, and I did check on this. The cat, according to Dave Meltzer, the cat was legit Tammy Fitch's real life cat.
Oh wow!
So she puts the cat in the bag, and Tammy Fitch leaves with the cat and the bag. So Candido follows her. Boo Bradley chases after them.
Yes, the idea is that she is heading to the bridge to throw the cat off of the bridge.
Candido, so they go to the back. This is where they switch bags here. And
yeah, Boo is screaming, "Where's Boots?"
Yeah, so Candido now has a bag, and he's back in the ring. It's supposed to be the bag with the cat. And he drops the bag. Bradley backs Candido into the corner.
The bag with Boots in the bag. That cat can't stand this. Cat cannot possibly keep breathing trapped in that bag. Bradley and Candido mixing it up. Candido's in the ring. Boo Bradley right there with him. Yeah, hit him, hit him. The crowd wants Bradley to hit Candido again. And who could blame him? There's a shot with a boot, a right. Boo Bradley in that middle rope. Tammy Fitch, though, is back ringside. She's got that bag again. Boo Bradley.
10 punches in the corner. Fitch then sprays hairspray into the eyes of Boo Bradley. Candido off the top rope, ass first, onto the bag with the cat inside it, killing the cat.
Candido, that cat is still in that bag, and Candido is climbing the top rope. Oh no! Oh my! Candido just did a dive from the top rope. I don't believe this. That cat is in that bag. Boots, the cat is in that bag.
Yes, a leg drop off the top, but instead it was all ass. This was the opposite of that. There's that classic footage of, I think it's a Bobby Eaton, Arn Anderson match, where it's basically to show how great Bobby Eaton was. He hits this beautiful top rope leg drop, the Alabama Jam, and in real time it looks like he just crushes Arn Anderson. But upon replay, you see that like his leg is bent and it never even makes contact with any part of Arn Anderson's body. This was the opposite of that. They had some lump of something in this bag to make you think the cat was still in there, and all 225 pounds of Chris Candido just obliterates this cat-filled bag.
Referee Mark Curtis, the aforementioned Brian Hildenbrand, he's into the ring. And Boo grabs and throws him down. Awesome bump here by Mark Curtis. Boo beats up some masked man.
Yeah, somebody literally dressed like a Power Ranger, and I'm not like, that's what they're wearing, comes in. Boo throws him down. Prior to him throwing down Mark Curtis, he was cradling the bag, crying. After he throws the Power Ranger down, he opens the bag and ostensibly sees his dead cat and starts crying uncontrollably.
So he breaks down in the ring. Cactus Jack comes out to console Boo Bradley. They hug. the crowd with a loud boots chant, and that's the end of this segment. So this was this was not the best of Smoky Mountain here, I assume.
No, this was horrible. And again, like the individual people involved executed what they were doing very well.
They did everything that they were supposed to do very well.
But that's like saying that Stacy Keibler and David Flair and Daphne and Crowbar did that whole wedding thing on on whatever WCW show that was that we reviewed very well. You can play your part well in an all-time horrendous segment, and that's what this was.
Yeah, I don't know why. I think Jim Cornette owes a lot of people some apologies after watching this show.
There's a lot of pots and kettles and the color black being quite revelatory, particularly with this segment. Absolutely,
and Boo Bradley's gear. He definitely owes Kevin Owens an apology.
Yeah, very, very true. We then get a promo from, as you said, a 22-year-old, very young Chris Candido. He's complaining about people being mad about him killing the cat. Tammy Fitch has been suspended, he says, but he says that still he, meaning Chris Candido, is being forced to wrestle Boo Bradley. He said that he found Boo in a cardboard box in Asbury Park, New Jersey, which I guess means that Balls Mahoney wasn't actually from Nutley, New Jersey. Disappointing.
You could tell just in this promo here, while Chris Candido was very young, you could tell that the young Tammy Fitch was she was destined for stardom. She just the facials she was making,
both of them
about this situation. You could tell they were ripe for superstardom.
Yeah, they were far more talented than the place they were in. Really allowed them to, I guess, show how good they were, which it happens a lot with people earlier in their career. But yes, they jumped off the screen here in comparison to so much of everything else we were seeing.
Another person who jumped off the screen in spectacular fashion is Cactus Jack.
He was incredible here in this promo. Like, this is right at the same time period, or close to the same time period, that he would be cutting those, great promos in ECW in the months and years to come. And it's not only what he says, which you'll lay out, but the wobbling tone of his voice. I don't think there's ever been anybody than Cactus Jack from like early through mid 90s that's pulled off that psychotic, disturbing character in a more effective way, just by the sound of his voice as much as anything that he's saying. It's just unbelievable here.
It's okay, Boo. You've got a lot more friends now. They suspended Tammy Fitch and Chris Candido for what they did. And I said to Bob Armstrong, fine, get rid of Tammy Fitch because we don't need her in our hair. But please, Bob, reinstate Chris Candido, because what he needs and what Smoky Mountain needs is for Chris Candido to take his medicine. You see, Boo, there's a shadow that hangs over you. And you won't be your own man till you step out from underneath that shadow and show the world that the goodness that lived inside Boots is not dead, but that it lives on inside your formerly dark and twisted soul. Please, Boo, strike a blow for all those people out there who've been used and abused by greedy hearts like those that lurk inside Chris Candido and Tammy Fitch.
You won't like him when he's angry, he says. And yeah, just a great promo by Cactus.
They're out in a field, by the way. They've buried Boots the cat,
That's
or
right.
they've put together like a memorial from a roadside memorial. And so they're sitting in the grass, backs to the camera at first, with this makeshift memorial, when Cactus starts saying what you described.
The Gangstas versus the Rock and Roll Express, managed by Jim Cornette.
Yeah, that is right. The Gangstas taking on the Jim Cornette-led Rock and Roll Express. So much of this seems so strange. I had forgotten, and I don't know how I could, because it was incredible as far as getting crowd heat, but I had forgotten about New Jack and Mustafa being in Smoky Mountain. And yes, the Rock and Roll Express managed by Jim Cornette. So that was I imagine that was one of the big draws for this show, was the fact that you were seeing the mortal enemies combining here to take on the Gangstas. Jim Cornette apparently had an injunction against a group called the Posse. I guess was
they're banned from ringside.
Yes, the Posse is banned from ringside. We join this in progress, and it's extraordinarily frustrating because the best part of a Rock and Roll Express match is the 10 minutes of Ricky Morton selling, being beaten down. And we literally join this as Robert Gibson gets the hot tag.
Yes, we were robbed of all of the great selling of Ricky Morton. All we get is the hot tag to Robert Gibson.
A 1995 hot tag to Robert Gibson.
He runs wild on both Mustafa and New Jack. Gibson hits an insecurity to New Jack, and the announcer calls it a side saddle kick.
Yes, Les Thatcher, the side saddle kick. He also called it the Gibson leg boot.
Yes.
The Gibson leg boot.
Noggin to noggin. New Jack. There's that side saddle kick by Robert Gibson. The Gibson leg boot, cover by Gibson.
That sounds like an early prototype of an electric guitar. It sounds like a college football play. It does not sound like a pro wrestling move. It certainly does not sound like a kick.
All four men are in the ring. New Jack nails Gibson with a slapjack to the head as the ref is tied up in the corner with Mustafa and Ricky Morton. Cornette at this point is on the apron. He gets punched by New Jack, but the tennis racket falls into the ring. It's picked up by Ricky Morton. He nails New Jack with the tennis racket.
Just imagine, by the way, Ricky Morton hitting New Jack with a tennis racket. This is one of the great things about wrestling, these things that you just can't imagine, and then you see it happening before you.
Cover by Gibson, 3 count. The Rock and Roll Express are the new Smoky Mountain Tag Team Champions.
The people are going crazy at this point, and this is where I noticed that Jim Cornette is wearing a white t-shirt, and it has written in just like sloppy marker on the back, Rock and Roll.
Mustafa nails Gibson while he's celebrating his victory. New Jack beats down Ricky Morton. Cornette again on the apron. But this time, he's got a look on his face where he's finally, people were on edge. Is Cornette going to turn on the Rock and Roll Express? This was the moment. He motions to the Gangstas to hold Ricky Morton, acting like he's going to turn on the Rock and Rolls. However, he winds up and nails both the Gangstas with the tennis racket.
This was great.
Yeah, Mustafa then beats down Cornette. Cornette is bleeding everywhere.
One of the worst cuts, whatever I say, worst blade jobs, just bleeding profusely, as much as we've ever seen on any show we've reviewed here. And of course, in great fashion, much like the episode that we reviewed for last week's podcast, if you're listening in linear fashion, where Christopher Daniels was wearing a white shirt and got just absolutely cut open bad, and there was blood all over the white shirt. He must have learned that here from Jim Cornette, because he wore that white shirt to just accentuate the blood.
D'Lo Brown is in the ring. I assume he's a member of earlier referenced Posse.
Yeah, and when he hit the ring, I'm like, who is that guy that looks like D'Lo Brown? Like, I wrote that down, and then they say it's D'Lo Brown. I had no idea that D'Lo Brown was in Smoky Mountain Wrestling in as 1994 turned into 1995.
Yeah, and they attack the leg of Jim Cornette with all kinds of weapons here. Finally, after a long beatdown of Jim Cornette, finally someone comes to make the save. It's Cactus Jack and the Dirty White Boy. They chase off the Gangstas. New Jack he's walking around ringside just taunting the fans. And
this is amazing.
I'm not sure who I'm more scared for, the fans or New Jack.
Yes.
The tensions were high here.
Yes, you can imagine New Jack in 1995 or 1994, as this was around Christmas time, 94, in Tennessee. New Jack It seemed as though his goal every time out in Smoky Mountain was to try to start a riot, and I was wondering if we weren't too far from that here.
Yeah, it looked like tensions were rising as he's taunting everyone on the outside. We cut to the locker room where the Rock and Roll Express are sitting down post-match with their new tag team titles.
Which are beautiful, by the way. I
Absolutely.
love the Smoky Mountain Tag Team Championships. I remember seeing them when they brought them to WCW Saturday Night in 1993 and being like, shit, how did they afford better looking tag titles than what WCW has right now? Little did I know Rick Rubin bought them.
Yeah, great taste in belts. Those were fantastic. Ricky talks about the beating that Cornette took, and he tells him, anytime you want to manage the Rock and Roll Express, you have an open invitation. In another area of the locker room, we see a completely covered in blood Jim Cornette.
Well, before that, though, the best part of this, and again, as we go through, and I wonder what my favorite parts of the show were, one of the best ones was backstage interviewer Chip Kessler here saying that, quote, we're trying to find wrestling manager Jim Cornette. Wrestling manager Jim Cornette. Like 45 minutes here into this pro wrestling program of Smoky Mountain, Chip Kessler felt the need to tell us that he was looking for wrestling manager Jim Cornette.
So he's standing there. Jim Cornette is completely covered in blood, and he screams, I don't need a doctor, I need a telephone.
This is great. He's staggering around, like you said, bloody mess, doesn't want a doctor, wants to make a phone call.
Yes, he's calling for some backup here for revenge on the Gangstas. So we then cut to Jim Cornette. He's cleaned up, he's at home. He's on the couch in front of his Christmas tree.
His leg is all busted up still.
That's right. He's got a bandage on his head. He's got crutches. His leg is all wrapped up. And he cuts a promo explaining that he never wants to forget Christmas '94. After 12 years of fighting the Rock and Roll Express, he thought to himself, what if they owed me? That's better than beating the Rock and Roll Express. So
yeah, he says, I could hold that over their heads for the rest of their lives, and I was going to get a real kick out of that. So right away, he establishes a logical reason for why he would want to do something that I think everyone watching would think, why the hell would Jim Cornette ever want to manage the Rock and Roll Express? So great start to this promo.
Yeah, made sense, good logic. He explains ego, and all the people were yelling for him to help the Rock and Roll do something. And he said, I kicked the Gangsta's butt for 22 seconds. And then,
yes, before that, he says, all those people who have spit on me for all those years, now they want me to do something. He says, my ego took over and thought I would do something. He says, I kicked some gangsta butt for 22 seconds before reality took over.
Reality took over where ego left off. I thought that was a fantastic line. He goes, I made a phone call. The Heavenly Bodies. I told them what happened. He says, get out of your WWF commitments and help me get even. He says that they canceled dates and they will be in Smoky Mountain Wrestling on January 28th. But he said, there's a problem. Bob Armstrong has a loser leaves Smoky Mountain stipulation that bans the Heavenly Bodies. And he says that Cornette says, I need them on my side. So he pleads to Bob Armstrong, I want to see you face to face on Smoky Mountain TV. You know this ain't right. I need a chance to get even. I need the Heavenly Bodies for it. Nobody should get away with this. And the show goes off the air. Awesome promo by Jim Cornette, giving context to how we got to where we got to, the importance of what happened, the moving this story, advancing it along to where it needs to get to with the Heavenly Bodies and the Gangstas, and at the same time addressing stipulations that would prevent that from happening and logically trying to get out of the stipulation, not just ignoring that it ever happened, but addressing it and trying to logically address it. Thumbs up to all of that in one promo. Great job.
Oh, It was fantastic. I would say that of all the episodes we've reviewed so far on season 2 of this podcast, this was the most effective segment and the most effective promo that we've seen, I would say by far, for all the reasons that you mentioned. He explained why he was helping the Rock and Roll Express. He, in true Jim Cornette fashion, revealed so much of it was about his own ego, both first in taking that spot and then in getting in the ring and thinking he could actually do something against the Gangstas. Then, as you said, he explains, that he wants the heavenly bodies to help him, acknowledging the fact that there's a stipulation that makes this impossible, and then coming up with a compelling reason to get out of a stipulation rather than just ignoring it. This was tremendous. It was in so many ways everything that a pro wrestling promo should be, and a textbook way of how to advance a storyline.
Yeah, and it was, it was him in his house, adding to it. It wasn't like he wasn't yelling and screaming. He was talking very matter of fact, very direct, like, hey, this is urgent. And
yes, it's so effective when you think of how over the top and how outlandish the Jim Cornette character is. This was him, still very Jim Cornette, but very serious, explaining his motivations while revealing his true character and laying out where things were going next.
And that's it. Like I mentioned, the show goes off the air. So Smoky Mountain Wrestling, you mentioned it in the pre-show before we started recording that the randomizer takes us to places we were excited to go to, but it takes us in the dying days, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah, we've had that quite a few times, whether it be AWA, whether it be maybe ECW. Most notably, ECW several times, World Class Championship Wrestling here a few episodes ago in this season. And it was fascinating to go back and watch this because, again, Smoky Mountain was, while completely different from ECW, it was like a parallel universe of ECW in that it was run by Jim Cornette at the same time ECW is being run by Paul Heyman. I was not able to see the TV of either of those promotions as they happened here in 1995, but I read about them all the time in the magazines that I referenced earlier. So I was, desperate to see them, but you never actually did. And it was these two sort of competing, totally different visions of what sort of an oddball pro wrestling territory could be, in 1994, 1995. And then the other weird thing too is that for, how different ECW and Smoky Mountain were and how much Paul E. and Jim Cornette hated each other and were so different in a lot of ways, there's also a lot of very similar things here as far as the way the show is put together, the type of stories that they did. It was just presented and filtered through such a completely different lens.
It's funny that you bring up the ECW comparison because it's like Smoky Mountain Wrestling is the bizarro ECW and ECW is the bizarro Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Yeah.
Like they are exact opposites, but the through lines of Candido and Cactus Jack and
Brian Lee.
Yeah, there's a lot of it's pretty funny to see the parallels. A lot of the same guys, but the presentation being completely different from each other. But it's on the same lines enough to where if you take a left, you get Smoky Mountain. You take a right, you get ECW, and it's pretty neat to see those parallels at the exact same time. This 94-95 period. Yeah.
For sure. And it's also like, as we talked about, it's the last time there would ever be anything like this where you had, these, while they weren't major companies, they weren't indie wrestling companies. Like they were legit, territories, ECW, Philly and New York and that area in 94, 95, and then obviously Smoky Mountain in Tennessee. And as we've talked about so much during some of these territory shows that we've reviewed, you would, if you lived in one place, you would see a guy, he'd be there for a couple of years. And then, the people stayed over had never seen him. And then, they'd go to that next state over and have a run there. This was in some ways the last time we'd ever see something, at least somewhat similar to that in the pro wrestling industry in this way.
Your favorite thing on the show?
Ooh, that's there's not a lot to choose from. It has to be the Jim Cornette promo at the end. I mean, if I'm saying that's the most effective segment of any of the TV shows we've reviewed yet on this podcast, for all the reasons we laid out, it really can't be anything other than that. The honorable mention would be the Cactus Jack, Boo Bradley makeshift memorial promo. I thought that was fantastic as well, and would have 100% been my favorite if the tape ended before the Jim Cornette promo.
Yeah, another honorable mention, the beating that Cornette takes here from the Gangstas is pretty spectacular. The Rock and Roll take a heck of a beating as well. So great job there by all involved in the main event as well. And that's about it. Worst thing for you? Obviously.
Without a doubt, the Boots the Cat stuff. It was just, and again, individual performances were good.
Yes.
But just the fact that was the story and that was how they played it out, it was just so dumb, so bad. It was, again, one of those things that we've talked about before where if your significant other or your parents or anyone that you care about or cares about you walked into the room and saw this, you would immediately be terrified about what the conclusions they drew about you as a human being.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up this week. I do want to remind everyone that wrestlingatrandom.com is the place to go to get all the links to subscribe to this podcast. We're available anywhere podcasts are found. So make sure that you subscribe. All the links are there. And the best way to interact with this show is via social media at Wrestle at Random on Twitter. We love to hear from everyone who's listening to shows, no matter how far back in the archives you are. We want to know what you think, and we want to know what your favorite parts are and your memories of watching that show as well. So definitely let us know when you're listening and what you think, and please interact with the show there. If you stay off of social media, can't blame you. We are also available via email, wrestlingatrandom@gmail.com. Again, all those links are available at wrestlingatrandom.com. And if you consume podcasts via YouTube, which some people do, that's also available at the links for the YouTube and anywhere else you want to consume this podcast. Again, wrestlingatrandom.com. And let's make sure that you guys know that the Patreon, like I talked about at the top of the show, those links, that's also available. Patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom, also available there as well. If you can't support the show financially, that's okay too. I get these times. You can support the show by telling your wrestling fan friends about the show. Tell your friends that used to be wrestling fans about the show as well. Anything you can do to spread the word helps this podcast along.
Yes, and tell your former friends. Maybe you have a childhood friend, much in the vein of a Chris Candido and Boo Bradley situation. I can't imagine that watching that segment or hearing us talk about that segment would bring your friendship back together, but who knows? Give it a shot. Tell them about the show and see what happens.
Yeah, and with that, we're going to call it a podcast. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy. I can't say I'm dying to see another Smoky Mountain show again. Maybe the randomizer will pull something from like 91 and 92. But I think I've got my fill for now. We'll see.
I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.